We're back, baby! People love to ask me, what's your favorite car in the entire game? Which is hard to say, because picking just one car out of the 900 cars in the game is next to impossible. I mean, some have their own specific situations or purposes and uses that just make them better, but they're not great overall. So instead, let's go over my favorite and least favorite vehicle in every single class in Grand Theft Auto 5. Obviously, this isn't like a final list. You could have very different opinions from me, and that is totally fine. Starting with the unique class of boats, I would probably have to say that my favorite vehicle in the boats class is the Kosatka. And I think I'd be stupid to say otherwise, because the Kosatka allows us to do the Cayo Perico heist. It's great for making money, it's a great storage location, and it is drivable. But if you wanted me to pick an actual boat and not a submarine, I'd probably have to go with the Sun Trap, which is a very forgotten, basic boat, but it has an open bow and reminds me of the boat we have back home, and just sitting up on that open bow is just the most relaxing place, so it'd have to be that. As for my least favorite, it has to be the Kurtz 31 patrol boat, just because, sure, it's one of only two weaponized boats in the game, but it's slow, it's big, and it's expensive. The commercial class doesn't have much to choose from, but was the easiest one for me, because the Phantom Custom might just be my favorite vehicle in the entire game. It's big, it's fairly fast, and it's extremely well armored. It's great for countering oppressors, scramjets, deluxos. They just run out of missiles before they can blow you up. And to be honest, when I'm driving this thing and griefers are trying to kill me, they typically just accuse me of using God mode, which I'm not, but I think it's funny they think I am. As for my least favorite, it would have to be the Mule Custom. When you're owning the nightclub, I mean, all you need is the Speedo Custom and the Pounder Custom. The Mule is just the slower, awkward middle child that you don't really need to buy, and if you buy it, you're stuck with it. You can't get rid of it, and all of your medium-sized sales are going to be in that. I would much rather take the Pounder. The Compacts class is quite compacted, so we'll keep this area compacted as well. My favorite is the Weevil, and my least favorite is probably the Brioso RA, but it was hard to pick a least favorite for this class. In Coupes, I love the look of the Postlude, but it's also very slow. It has the worst top speed and the worst lap time in this class, so I wouldn't really drive it much. Instead, I'd probably choose the Oracle. I know it just looks like your basic car, and it kind of is, but I just like it, especially in this blue color. It just looks nice, okay? Now, I might get hate for this, but my least favorite coupe is the Euros X32. I know it's new, I know people love it. I'm not a fan of the Euros cars. They're just not my cup of tea. I'm not a fan of the shape or the headlights, but if you like it, more the power to you. Now, all the cycles are basically the same, so picking a favorite and least favorite was kind of pointless. My favorite's probably the Inductor because it's a perfect mix of the race bike and the BMX being fast, but not the fastest, and having jumping ability, but not the best jumping ability. As for my least favorite, I don't know, probably the Cruiser. It's the slowest, and I don't know, it's a bike. They all are. The emergency class would have been a lot easier to pick from a couple of years ago. However, in recent years, we've gotten a lot of new emergency vehicles that we can own. And I'd have to say that my favorite, although it was a tough decision, is probably the Gauntlet Interceptor. I'm just a big fan of it. I think it looks nice, I think it looks beefy and strong, but if I had to pick a second place, it would probably be the Lifeguard. I mean, it was one of the first emergency vehicles with lights that we were able to own, aside from the RCV, which I think is big, bulky, not too quick, and every little benefit it has, you can just get that benefit bigger on a different vehicle, so it's kind of pointless. When it comes to helicopters, my favorite has to be the Akula. The Akula is the first stealth helicopter we got, and it looks amazing. There is, however, one very close runner-up with the Sea Sparrow. Being the only helicopter that can land on water, this Sparrow just has a lot more maneuverability. Now, as for my least favorite, you might think I'm a hypocrite here. It's the Annihilator Stealth, the only other stealth helicopter in the game. Compared to the Akula, I just don't think it looks as nice. I was never a fan of the original Annihilator, and I think Rockstar kind of dropped the ball on this, because it looks like it has PS2 graphics. When it comes to the industrial class, I guess my favorite's the Dump, and my least favorite is the Cement Mixer. How do you pick a favorite here? When it comes to the military class, I'd probably have to say that my favorite is the Kunjala. Sure, it's not necessarily the strongest vehicle, but it's fairly quick, and it's a good jack of all trades when it comes to tanks. A potential runner-up, but instead my least favorite, is the anti-aircraft trailer. Mostly because of the fact that you can only call it out with the Saddler. If I want to drive it and tow it with an APC or a Chernobog, I need a friend to own the trailer or the Chernobog. I can't call up both of those vehicles. If the anti-aircraft trailer was its own separate entity as a personal trailer versus a personal vehicle, it would probably be at the top of the military's class for me. When it comes to motorcycles, my favorite and least favorite are not totally considered motorcycles. My least favorite was basically a three-way tie between the Strider, the Rampant Rocket, and the Chimera, but I'd probably have to go with the Strider. It just has no mid-air control, and if you get off the ground, you're not landing it well. As for my favorite, it's technically a scooter. The Faggio mod has a lot of unique customization. I like making cars look wacky and unique, and being able to add 50 mirrors and 100 headlights, who's gonna say no? There was a close two-way tie in the Muscles class, both of which are trucks, as I'm a big truck fan. The runner-up is the Yosemite and all of its variants that are in the Muscles class, just because it has a lot of customization. But my favorite would have to be the Slam truck, mostly because it's the closest thing in-game to my dream truck, the 1954 5-window Chevy. I know it's based on a Ford, but maybe one day we'll get the 5-window Chevy. As for my least favorite, probably the Dominator GTX. I mean, it looks okay, but its performance is not great, and I'm just not a big Mustang fan. In the off-road class, the Camacho is a lot of people's first choices, and it's definitely near the top of the list for me. It's cheap, it's effective, and it's quick. But for me, I'd have to go with the Outlaw. I just like side-by-sides, I think they're cool, and it reminds me of that one time I had a side-by-side in Forza that could beat any car in a drag race. It was kind of a glitch. And as for my least favorite, if I had to pick one, I guess I'd pick the Dune FAV. I don't know why. In the open wheels class, the BR8 is probably my favorite, and the R88 is probably my least favorite. Just like the look of them more, and performance-wise, that's just how they lay out. Now when it comes to planes, I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this one, because my least favorite plane is the Rogue. I know a lot of people love this plane, it's cheap, it seats 2 people, it has bombing capabilities, it has explosive rounds, but my favorite is the P-45 Nakota. The Nakota just looks better in my opinion, and the only reason I hate the Rogue is because the Nakota just doesn't stand up, and I'm honestly jealous. The Nakota only seats 1, doesn't have explosive rounds, and doesn't have bombing capabilities. So, on paper, the Rogue is better. But I like the Nakota, and I'm just jealous. But a close runner-up has to be the Ultralight. I just love the Ultralight. It's such a meme, it's fun, it's unique, and it has stealth capabilities, which is pretty unique. When it comes to sedans, my favorite would probably have to be the Stafford, because I do like the look of that kind of classic car. But a close second would probably be the Vorschlaghammer, which is the new sedan. It looks nice, it's got some good liveries, some good customization, and it has a drift version, which I think is one of the better drift cars. As for my least favorite, I don't know, the Beater Emperor, because it sucks. In the service class, my favorite would have to be the Dune. The Dune is also just such a meme. It's weird to drive, but it's fun. It's unique, and it's just good to run around with friends in. As for my least favorite, I don't know, probably the Trashmaster. Again, there's nothing that really stands out good or bad in this class except for the Dune. The sports class was one of the hardest classes to choose from because there's just so many cars. But I'd have to say my favorite is probably a 3-way tie between the Hot Ring cars. And most of this is just due to the fact that I have some really good memories in the Hot Ring Sabre. I like the Hot Ring Everon because it's based on a Toyota Tundra, and the Hot Ring Hellfire is just another gauntlet. I used to do the Hot Ring races when they came out with a really close friend of mine, and they are some of the greatest GTA memories that I have. Just tag teaming, passing each other, catching up to people that screwed us over, screwing those people over. It's just, I wish I could go back to those days. It was so much fun. Although since there's so many cars in this class, I should mention some runner-ups. One of my runner-ups is the Vito Classic, just because it reminds me of the soapbox car I had growing up, and it has like same livery that also has the same number as my car, so it's fun and unique. As well as the new Envisage. I know a lot of people think this car is boring to drive, don't like it. I've always loved the look of the Hyundai Envision 74, but I understand why people don't like this car. Personally, I do enjoy it. As for my least favorite, it sits right next to the Strider. It's the Raptor, the 3-wheel car that has no mid-air control, and sure, there's lots of other cars I don't like in the sports car class, but this just takes the cake. The Raptor is horrible. In the sports classics class, it was a little harder to pick because there's a lot of good cars, but my favorite is probably the 190Z. I just love the look of these Datsuns, and I definitely had to buy one when it came back into Simeon's dealership. As for my least favorite, well, I made an entire video on that, so you should all know that it's the Mamba. I don't like the Mamba. The Supers class was also difficult to choose from, and for me, it would probably be the Zentorno. The Zentorno is a classic car, and it was iconic back in the day. Some people don't like it, but personally, it just holds that special place in my heart. A close potential runner-up is the weaponized Ignis. Now, I play on PC, so we don't actually have weaponized Ignis. That's a console exclusive. But if we did have it, I mean, I enjoy the Ignis, and having a weaponized supercar that also can't take bullets on the back just feels like a Zentorno Mark II to me, and I would really like the opportunity to drive it without spending hundreds of dollars on a brand new PS5. As for my least favorite, it was kind of a toss-up between the Tesseract and the Devastate 8. I know people like these cars. Personally, I think they're hideous. I think the Devastate 8 just has awkward proportions, those massive exhausts on the back that aren't even massive, they're just massive holes. I'm just not a fan. Now the SUV class is interesting because my favorite vehicle is not technically an SUV and should be a truck, and it's the Vapid Contender. It's based on a 2007 to 2013 Toyota Tundra, and I love this truck. I own this truck in real life, and I can basically make it the exact same as mine in real life. Which also brings me to the point of this being my least favorite vehicle in the SUVs class. That's right, it's my favorite and my least favorite. I love it because it's based on my truck in real life, but I hate it because you can't get rid of that massive front bull bar, and they've made it a Ford in-game, despite the fact that it's based on only different versions of the Toyota Tundra. So personally, between the Vapid mistake, the bumper mistake, and the classing mistake, putting in SUVs, I love this vehicle, but I also hate what Rockstar did to it. In the utility class, it was a toss-up, very, very close between the Forklift, which is probably my favorite vehicle in the game. It's just such a meme, and it can't even make it up Chiliad. And the Dock Tug, which I think we need a Dock Tug custom that matches like the Phantom custom with the armor, just because it would be such a meme pulling the MOC trailer. Come on, Rockstar, please. I made a video with all the vehicles that we want, that you won't give us. This is one of them. So is the Forklift. And actually, so is the Air Tug in Part 2, which is probably my least favorite in this class, but I don't really have a reason for it. It's just slower, it doesn't really have any special abilities, and exists. And finally, closing off with vans, my favorite van is probably the Yuga Classic 4x4, just because it's unique, got some good customization, and although it isn't actually 4x4 and is just rear-wheel drive, it has some decent off-roading capabilities. My least favorite, however, is the armored box fill, because it's not armored at all. It looks sick, and it's not overly expensive, but if you're gonna make it armored and name it armored, at least give it, you know, some armor. Now, if you want more information about why I hate the Mamba, you can see that entire video here. I break down my whole reasoning. I think it's valid, I think it's sound, but you can disagree. I can't lean far enough back, so I'm just gonna sit here while the things play. We're not fading to black this time, we're just gonna kind of end it.